The restaurant was never quiet, not even for a second, even before the doors fully opened. Sound already lived inside the walls. Plates clinked as staff set tables. Glasses tapped lightly as they were placed just right. Chairs scraped the floor, leaving thin echoes behind them. Voices rose and fell like waves that never stopped moving. Some people laughed too loudly, filling the room without caring who heard them. Others leaned in close, speaking in low tones, as if their words were secrets meant only for the table. It was one of those places where money showed itself without shame. Soft golden lights reflected off polished walls and smooth tables. Everything looked clean, expensive, and carefully planned. The air smelled of warm bread, spices, and something sweet that stayed in the nose long after you noticed it. People did not come here just to eat. They came to be seen, to sit back, to feel important. The waitress had been on her feet since late afternoon. By now, her body knew the rhythm of the night. Step, turn, smile, place the plate. Step back. Her movements were quick but careful, shaped by long days of carrying heavy trays and hot plates. She knew how to move through tight spaces without bumping into anyone. She knew how to avoid eye contact when it wasn't wanted. She knew how to disappear even while standing right in front of people. She moved through the room like someone who had learned how to take up as little space as possible. She wore the same uniform she always did, clean, simple, forgettable. It fit her well enough to do the job, but not well enough to stand out. The kind of outfit people forgot the moment she walked away. Most guests did not look at her face. They saw her hands when she placed a plate down. They noticed her arms when she poured wine. They heard her voice only when she asked, "Is everything okay?" Even then, many did not answer. A nod, a wave. Sometimes nothing at all. She was used to it. Being unseen had become normal, almost comfortable. It hurt less when you stopped expecting more. What no one in the room knew was that once, long ago, music had filled her life, not as a hobby, not as something she talked about at parties. It had been her whole world. The thing she woke up thinking about. The thing that made sense when nothing else did, but that world had grown smaller over time. Bills arrived every month without asking. Family needs came before personal dreams. Moments appeared where choosing safety felt easier than chasing hope. Slowly, without one clear ending, music moved from the center of her life to the corner. Then from the corner into silence. The piano at the edge of the restaurant sat quiet. It was old, dark, and slightly out of place. Its surface carried small marks from years of being touched and ignored. People liked the idea of it more than the sound. It made the room feel classy, like something out of another time. Even though no one played it anymore, sometimes guests leaned drinks on it without thinking. Sometimes coats were draped over the bench like it was just another chair. Once, someone had left a napkin tucked between the keys and never came back for it. To the waitress, it was impossible not to notice. Every shift, her eyes found it without meaning to. Even when she was busy. Even when she was tired. It was like a quiet pull she could not explain. She never touched it. Never mentioned it. She had learned that some parts of herself were better kept quiet. Safer that way. That night, a group arrived that changed the balance of the room. They did not rush through the door. They did not wait politely either. They entered like the space already belonged to them. Staff moved faster when they walked in. The manager's back straightened without thinking. Servers whispered to one another before stepping away. At the center of the group was a man whose presence felt heavy. He did not need to raise his voice to be noticed. People leaned in when he spoke, even if they pretended not to. His clothes were simple but perfect. Nothing flashy. The kind of style that looked effortless because it was expensive. He was known for having more money than patience. Deals followed him wherever he went. Power followed him too. And so did the belief that the world should bend. When he asked it to, the waitress was assigned to his table. She felt it before she reached them. That quiet pressure in her chest. The feeling that one wrong move could turn into a problem she could not fix. She placed water glasses down with steady hands, and offered the menu with a polite smile. He barely glanced at her. The evening moved on. Orders were taken. Wine was poured. Plates arrived one by one. Laughter arose again, louder around that table than the others. The man spoke about success, about effort, about how people get what they deserve if they work hard enough. Some nodded. Some laughed. The waitress listened without meaning to as she passed by. She had heard this kind of talk before. Words that sounded simple, but felt heavy when you lived on the other side of them. At one point, someone mentioned the piano. It was a light comment, almost a joke. A remark about how places like this always had one. Even if no one ever played it, the man looked over. His eyes rested on the piano for a moment. Then he looked back at the waitress as she approached with plates. "Does anyone here actually know how to play that thing?" he asked, his voice calm but sharp. The question floated in the air. The manager hesitated. Other staff looked down. No one wanted attention drawn their way. The waitress felt her stomach tighten before she could stop herself. The truth slipped out in a soft voice. I learned a long time ago. It was meant to be nothing. Just a small answer. A passing detail. But his eyes changed. "A waitress who plays piano?" he said, almost amused. "That's interesting." She felt heat rise to her face. "Not anymore," she added quickly. "I mean, not professionally." He leaned back in his chair. "Then why have it?" he said, nodding toward the piano. "Seems like a waste?" Some at the table laughed. The sound felt sharp to her ears. The waitress wished she could disappear into the floor. He studied her for a moment longer, then smiled in a way that did not reach his eyes. "You should play something," he said. Her heart skipped. "I'm working," she replied carefully. "And it's been a long time." He waved his hand. "One song. It won't take long." She glanced toward the manager. The manager avoided her eyes. The room seemed to grow warmer. Smaller, like the walls had moved closer without anyone noticing. "I'm really not," she started. His tone stayed calm, but the meaning was clear. I asked honestly. It was not a threat spoken out loud. It did not need to be. Everyone understood how these things worked. The waitress stood still, her tray heavy in her hands. She thought about rent, about shifts she could lose, about how easy it was for someone like him to forget her the moment she said no, and how hard it would be for her to fix the damage around them. Other guests had started paying attention. Curious looks, quiet smiles. A few phones lifted but were quickly lowered when staff gave warning looks. She felt small, not because of the piano, but because of the moment. Because once again, a choice did not feel like a choice at all. "I'll see what I can do," she said softly. She handed the tray to another server and walked toward the piano. Each step felt heavier than the last. She had not touched one in years. Life had pushed music to the side, then off the table, then into memory. There had been nights she dreamed of keys and woke with tears in her eyes. But dreams did not pay bills. The bench was cold when she sat down. The piano smelled faintly of dust and polish. A drink ring marked one corner. The forgotten napkin still rested between the keys. The room buzzed again, but differently now. Not loud, expectant. Her hands rested in her lap. They shook. She thought of all the times she had practiced alone. Early mornings, late nights, empty rooms where music was the only thing that listened. Of the quiet promise she once made to herself that she would never stop playing. She swallowed. Behind her, the man's voice cut through the space. "Relax," he said. "It's just a song." Just a song, but for her, it was never just that. She placed her fingers above the keys, not touching yet. The piano felt like an old friend she had not spoken to in years. One she had left without explaining why. The noise of the restaurant pressed in. Forks clinked. Someone laughed too loudly. A chair scraped the floor. Her chest felt tight. Fear mixed with something else she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. She closed her eyes for a second, not to impress, not to prove anything, just to remember who she was before the world told her to be quieter. Her fingers lowered. And just before the first note could sound, the room held its breath. Her fingers finally touched the keys. For a moment, nothing happened. No loud sound. No dramatic start, then the first note came. It was soft. Almost too soft to notice. It slipped into the room like a quiet breath, gentle and unsure. A few people kept talking. Someone laughed at a joke that no one else seemed to hear. Plates were still being moved. A glass clinked against another. The world did not stop yet, but the sound did not stop either. Another note followed. Then another, slow, careful, like the piano was waking up after a long sleep. The waitress did not rush. She did not look back. She let her hands move the way they remembered how, even after all these years. Her fingers felt stiff at first, like they were unsure if they were still welcome here. But she kept going. One note led to the next. Her touch grew steadier. The piano answered her. The sound changed. It grew warmer, deeper. It began to slide into the small spaces between voices and footsteps. It did not fight the noise of the room. It moved under it, around it. Like water finding its way through cracks in stone, one table went quiet. Man stopped speaking mid-sentence and frowned slightly, not knowing why he had stopped. A woman lowered her fork slowly and looked toward the piano. Then another table went quiet. Forks paused in the air. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. A chair that had been scraping the floor suddenly froze in place. People turned their heads without thinking. No one told them to. They just did. The waitress kept her eyes closed. At first, fear filled her chest. It sat there, tight and heavy. Fear of hitting the wrong key. Fear of her hands failing her. Fear of stopping too soon. Fear of being seen too clearly after hiding for so long. Her heart beat fast, but as the notes continued, something inside her slowly began to loosen. Her breathing slowed. Her shoulders dropped. Her hands stopped shaking. The piano no longer felt strange beneath her fingers. The music was not fast. It was not loud. It did not try to show off. It did not beg for attention. It simply told the truth. It told a story made of long days and quiet nights. Of things given up without goodbye. Of choices made not because they were wanted, but because they were needed. Of strength that grows slowly, in silence. When no one is watching, the room listened. Even the man at the table leaned forward without realizing it. The smile he had worn earlier faded from his face. His eyes stayed fixed on the woman at the piano, focused and still, as if he were seeing her for the first time. The music moved gently, then deeper. It carried weight, but not anger. Sadness, but not defeat. Hope, but without promise. It did not say everything would be okay. It said, "This is what it feels like to keep going." Somewhere near the back of the room, a woman wiped her eyes. She did not know why she was crying. Nothing bad had happened. Nothing sad had been said, but the sound had reached something she kept hidden. Something she had not touched in years. A server stood frozen with a tray in their hands. Completely forgotten, the manager stopped moving, one hand resting on the counter. Eyes fixed on the piano. Time felt different now, slower, thicker, like the room had stepped out of the busy night and into something private. Something shared, even though no one spoke. She played. The waitress remembered things she thought she had lost. Early mornings when the world was quiet and empty. Sitting alone with the piano before anyone else woke up. Practicing until her fingers hurt, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because it felt right. She remembered the feeling of being understood without speaking. Of being enough without proving it. She remembered who she was before. She learned how to shrink herself. The piano responded to her touch like it had been waiting, like it did not care how much time had passed. Like it had not kept score. The sound grew stronger. Not louder. Stronger. It filled the room completely now. There was no space left for talking. No room for laughter that did not belong. The restaurant, once loud and busy, now felt held together by the music. The man at the table stopped leaning back. His posture changed. His confidence softened into something quieter, something closer to respect. He did not interrupt. He did not smile. For once, he did not control the moment when the final notes came. They did not rush away. They slowed down. They stretched out. They stayed in the air, holding the room together for one long second, then silence, not the awkward kind, the kind that feels full. No one moved. No one spoke. The waitress's hands rested on the keys. Her eyes were still closed. Her chest rose and fell slowly as she took one deep breath, then another when she finally opened her eyes. The room looked different, smaller, but warmer. She stood up slowly. Unsure of what was supposed to happen next, her legs felt weak. Her hands felt warm. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years. Then someone clapped. Just one person. The sound was gentle, almost careful. Then another person joined in, and another. Soon the sound spread through the room. Not loud, not wild, but real, honest. People stood from their chairs. Some nodded at her. Some smiled. Some simply watched her, as if they had been reminded of something important they almost forgot. The applause faded. But the feeling stayed. The man at the table stood as well. The room went quiet again. He did not speak right away. He looked at her, really looked at her, without humor or challenge. That was... He paused, searching for the right word. Honest. She nodded slightly. She did not know what to say. I was wrong, he added. The words surprised even him. I thought it was just a piano. He reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. Not money, a card. If you ever want to play again, he said. For people who listen, not judge, call the number on the back. She looked at the card. Then back at him. She did not reach for it right away. I will, she said quietly. But clearly he nodded once and sat down. The moment passed, but it did not disappear. The manager approached her, voice softer than she had ever heard it. Take a break, they said. You've earned it. She stepped away from the piano and into the quiet hallway near the back of the restaurant. The noise of the dining room faded behind her. Her hands still felt warm. Her chest felt light. She leaned against the wall and laughed. Softly to herself, not because anything was funny, but because she felt free, for the first time in a long while. Later that night, when the restaurant emptied and the lights dimmed, she passed the piano once more. This time, she stopped. She rested her hand on the edge of it. Just for a moment, you waited, she whispered. The piano did not answer, but she felt heard. She left the restaurant with tired feet and a full heart. The night air felt cooler, cleaner, like something had shifted inside. Her tomorrow would still bring bills, work, worry, but something had changed. She walked home knowing. One thing for sure, her story was not over. It was just beginning.